Welcome to The Breakdown with Allison Dore on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
It is that time of day. We are talking all things entertainment, pop culture, current events, so much more. Coming up on today's show, I will be joined by author Jass Aujla. Her debut novel, Next of Twin, is getting lots of attention and sounds like a very fun romp. My next guest released her debut novel, Next of Twin, back in May, and of course, has written many other things, shorter form fiction, poetry in publications worldwide. But as of now, you can read, and this book sounds so fun. I've got it on order. I'm waiting for it to arrive. I cannot wait. Joining me now, the author of Next of Twin. Please welcome to the show, Jass Aujla. How are you?
I am good, Allison. How are you?
I am good also. And you know what? Let's start with the book, and then we're gonna get into you a little bit more. But I think first of all, I'm so sorry the book didn't arrive before you got here, but it sounds so up my alley. Tell the listeners what Next of Twin is about.
Yeah, so Next to Twin is a suspense thriller about identical twin sisters, Angeli and Rhea, who meet in San Francisco decades after being separated at birth. And Angeli is a successful business owner, married to a wealthy lawyer, and Rhea is a skilled con artist and thief. And so when the twins finally meet, it's quite evident that each twin wants what the other has. And a week later, Rhea wakes up in the hospital. She's mistaken for Angeli, and with no memory of who she is, she's informed by a homicide detective that Michael is dead and that she is the only suspect. So Next to Twin is the perfect blend of suspense and drama, and I believe, Allison, when your copy arrives, that you will be reading it till the very end. It's going to hook you, I think, from the first few pages.
Well, I think the first thing is I love a separated at birth story. Now, I'm obviously in real life, if that happens to people, that's devastating. I'm so sorry. But the Parent Trap primed all of us to be stoked about twins being separated. I also love, there is something, not only do I read so much mystery, but I'm also, a big true crime person. And there is something about con artists that I think are so interesting because for some reason it's almost like endearing in a way. Don't get me wrong. Awful, and when we hear the real life stories, it's like, well, this is terrible. But at the same time, there is this level of like, man, how'd they come up with that? Or how did they, it takes a special type of sociopath to be able, I think, to really con people and not feel bad about it. And obviously, there's something you find interesting about the con artist life because you chose that life for one of your characters. What interests you about it? What draws you to that type of
Well,
person?
I think just the whole suspense thriller genre is kind of exciting. And when I was young, I mean, certainly I didn't read suspense thrillers, but I always enjoyed reading a story that I could get lost in. And I think for me, just writing in this genre really stimulates and engages a part of my brain that your normal everyday experiences can't quite reach. And in a way, it kind of fulfills my curiosity for the unknown, and just the ability to live vicariously through my characters was probably, the other their draw to it. And interesting enough, when I introduce myself to people, I always say I'm dual careered. I'm, an author and a writer, but I also share, my writing career with with a 25-year professional a career in the banking industry, and so it's kind of like good versus evil, maybe internally as well. But yeah, it's just I think that's really kind of what just the ability to live vicariously through make believe in a way. I think is the draw there.
It just hit me as you were saying that. I've never really thought about it this way, but because I often think, like, when I hear certain stories, or, I also love a heist movie, right? Or if I watch something like that and I think, man, if I didn't have such a strong sense of morals and empathy and ethics, I feel like I could come up with some really fun crimes. And uh obviously I'm never going to do that because I do have a an overactive moral compass, almost. Um, but yet I can absolutely see how being able to create that character and live it out on the page would be tremendously fun. And and it's unlimited because you can make up whatever you want. That person can be whatever type of person you want them to be.
Yeah. And I, in a way, in the way, Next to Twin actually became, it actually came from an article I read, about twins getting away with murder, and, because of their shared DNA. And so this article was about the progression of DNA testing and whatnot. And so I kind of wanted to explore that further in my, in my book. And it's the what if, that's always appealing to me. And I also want to write a story that would keep readers engaged till the very end, and maybe even guessing who did it to the very end.
That is the thing that always boggles my mind about mystery suspense writers is, how do you come up with the ends? How do you fool us or keep us guessing? And with that, especially with this being your first novel, was that something you really had to think about and hone, or is that something that, like, I would imagine an editor would be really helpful with, or did that kind of come naturally for you in this story where you went, I think they're gonna go back and forth a lot?
Yeah, so um, I'm going to say the first draft of the novel itself was written primarily on my commute into the city every day, and so that took me about a year and a half. And yeah, and so I feel that organically, like when I was writing it, I kind of knew very high level what the basis of the story was, and what's going to happen, but I kind of in a way didn't know a lot of the other supporting characters, or the suspicious characters as they call them. Um and 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 I feel like the story came to me organically. But to your point about editor, and then really just honing in and getting to the crux of the story, and then kind of what I did was within the editing process, and actually the editing process probably took me a lot longer, or like it took me double the time to edit the book than it actually took me to write that first draft.
Mhm.
And it was a process of really honing in on honing in on the elements and the pieces that were there in the story, and then really just kind of filtering, really just drawing out some of the characters. And interesting enough, I actually rewrote the ending. So I had an ending from the first draft, and as I because I had gotten feedback from a developmental editor, and as I then started crafting the story and really ensuring that there were no plot holes. It by the time I got to the end, I was like, yeah, this ending doesn't make sense anymore, and so I had to literally scrap the last 5 chapters and rewrite them, just so that the story flowed the way I wanted it to.
That is so interesting. Also, there's a number of things you've said here that I want to get into. The first of which is, so you wrote the first draft on your commute, which to me, bless people that are productive in transit. I am so jealous of that because I always, like, whenever I take a plane, I'm like, I'm going to get so much work done on this plane. And then I get on the plane and I'm like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm annoyed. I'm going to read my book and have a nap. Are you naturally very good at getting yourself to do the things you want to do? Or was it a struggle to start writing while you're on your commute? Like, is that a skill you can get better at, or are you naturally good at that?
So, so I'll say that, writing in itself and writing this book was like my lifelong dream. And but I had to focus on it because, what do when you're dual career, what do you focus on? And you have to be really mindful and very with intent and strategic about it. And so I consciously said, okay, yeah, there are going to be days where I'm not going to feel it, but as long as I have that laptop, my personal laptop with me, and I make that effort to open it, and I found that once I did that, and once I just started, once I started typing, I felt like the energy just flowed, and so it, that's kind of how it happened for me. But there were times where I had a plan, especially when I was editing, to be like, okay, well, here's the plan, and if I, edit these chapters on these days, then it would flow that way. And certainly, COVID didn't help, because I'd written the first draft before COVID, and was really, proud of my accomplishment. But then when it came to the editing, I was planning on editing, while I was going to commute. But then, COVID really changed that, and so I had to readjust. But most definitely, I feel like, just I'm going to say, like, putting a structure and a process maybe comes natural to me, but the whole creative and making time for the creativity, is, I in a way had to leave it up to the universe to ensure that, I got those juices flowing.
Can I ask, how much work time would you have in a commute?
So my commute was 55 minutes, one way. And so I live in Brampton, and commuting to Toronto, yeah, it was about 55 minutes, and that was on a good day. Sometimes there were train delays, and while my fellow commuters were, beside me, grumbling about the delay, I was in phase because it actually gave me a little bit more time to keep typing.
I mean, it's pretty incredible to be able to write that whole first draft in just a year and a half, just in commute time. Like, that to me is very inspiring for other people who are like, I want to get, I want to write, or I want to try to do this or that or whatever it is, but I have no time. And I think, yeah, to be able to say, okay, well, she could do it in a relatively, because look, even for a lot of people who can dedicate more time to it, it can take longer than that to write your first book. And so I think it's very much like, okay, so this is like the pursuit of an attainable goal. You can use that time. Like, I think that's really great. And then yeah, I can't imagine when you finish that first draft, like, were you, because I'm assuming you take the train in, were you like on the train and when you finished, and like, because I would get up on that train and be like, guess what, suckers? What was that moment like?
Uh, well, if I certainly, yeah, I probably kept it a little bit more low key than that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there were moments, there were moments certainly. It's interesting because, on the commute into work, I was the first, the all the seats are empty, but the tricky part was leaving work and giving myself enough time to make
Yes.
sure I wasn't just jumping on the train and then the train was going, that I actually caught a seat, because there were days where I was like running for the train, and then there were no seats available, and I thought, okay, now I got to stand here, and now I've just I'm going to waste 55 minutes
Mm.
standing, and but there were times where seats opened up, and I would like totally grab it and start writing. And I remember, there was this one time where this guy kind of looked at me, and it was like this mad rush to open up my laptop and start typing, because I think I was just percolating with thoughts and ideas, and I wanted to get it down. And he kind of looked, and he leaned over and he goes, "Are you a writer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, can't talk right now.
Yeah.
I'm writing."
Yeah. Don't talk to strangers. Um, yeah, that's I mean, I think it's great, man. I would imagine, yeah, once you get rolling with the story, you're anxious to get back to it. And so
Yeah.
that would make you really look forward to that commute, which, yeah, if you've tried to leave the city of Toronto at 5 p.m. in any mode of transportation, um, it's gross.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no way to do it that is not real annoying. And so if
Yeah.
you can find a way to enjoy that time, that is so incredible. I also know, in your bio, it says you're passionate about creativity and personal growth. And whenever I see the personal growth, I always go beep, beep, beep. Oh, what are we talking about? Because that's one of the areas I love in life that I think is so fascinating. What type of personal growth is the thing that's exciting to you? What are you passionate about in that arena?
I think just being able to, like, live your dream, right? Like
Mm.
I had said, earlier. I mean, I grew up with immigrant parents. I migrated to Canada when I was 2. I was born in India, and I had this seed that I always wanted to be a writer, and I think it started at a very young age. But not being able to, but still being able to, you know, study it in university and in high school and university. But then, there was a moment in life where, my parents were like, okay, get a real job. And,
Mhm.
and hence, went into banking, but, no matter how much I, accomplished in my professional career, I still felt like something was missing. And to be able to, set a goal and say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm not getting any younger, and yeah, certainly. And a lot of people say, okay, well, I'm gonna do that when I retire, and yeah, I'm. Maybe 10 years away from retirement myself in my professional career, but I didn't want to wait till then. And so
Mhm.
for me, personal growth really meant, how do I adjust my life, and um, how do I adjust my life and still be able to attain that dream, and just being able to chase it. And so, it started actually with the writing, because with the poetry as well, because as a teenager, I used poetry as an outlet to really process my feelings, because when I was growing up, I was in a constant tug of war with, between two cultures.
Mhm.
My the Canadian culture, as well as my Indian heritage, and I was able to really rediscover my love for poetry when I opened my author account on Twitter, and that's my original intent, interesting enough, was to promote my yet to be published debut novel. However, I fell into the world of prompts, and really fell into the poetry community on Twitter and was able to then, write on a daily basis. And I mentioned earlier when COVID happened, I lost all my writing time. And so to be able to still have, that mini goal of, okay, I've got to, write something, got to write a poem, that speaks to some of my experiences, and use this prompt word. And 2 years later, I've got, I feel like I've got like probably two volumes of poetry writings that in a way are out there as well, and in a way it's kind of been a shorter process than writing the book, but still a valuable one as well.
I love that concept of I'm not going to wait anymore. Right. And because I think you're right. I think a lot of people do say, well, when I'm retired, I'll take this up. Or when this happens, I'll take it up. When that happens. And everyone um, deserves to find a way to bring it into their lives a little bit now and
Yeah.
start making those tiny inroads. And, depending on financial situations or familial situations or whatever it is, that might be smaller steps for some people. But I love that you said no. Like I'm not waiting another 10 years to try my dream, because I do think, and especially in um well, you know what? I think probably everywhere in the world, it's just coming from different places. But there is this idea of like, no, there's realistic jobs, there's safe jobs, there is uh, real jobs, and then there's something you love to do. And I hate that. And I understand it, but I don't like it. And I don't like the idea that some people are basically zombies. Like, no, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And then when I'm 65 or 70 or however it is, when I retire, then it's my time. No, boo, you get one life. It's all your time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I love that you were like, I have to find a way to build it in, because I think that does take self-awareness, that takes thought about life and the world and how things work and how we walk through the world. And I think that's so important. And then now here we are on the radio talking about your book. Like
Yep.
you did it.
and,
You
and
did it.
and I'm on the same radio station that you will be later interviewing one of my favorite authors, Ruth Ware, and and I mean, in the past few years, I've like enjoyed her books. I consume most of my literature through the audio version. So
Mhm.
when I saw that, I was like, oh wow. So you'll have to pitch my book to her if you don't mind. Uh,
I actually talked to her yesterday. And
oh,
yeah, we did a pre-tape yesterday morning. And what a sweet, lovely human being. And it's so interesting because she was very much just as she was saying how, when she was a kid, like she didn't know anyone who had a creative job. She understood that people wrote books, but she was like, well, not people like me. And and I think, again, under different circumstances, there's a lot of people in the world that can relate to that. And even though she has hit that rarefied level of being so internationally successful, um it's amazing what she's so sweet and lovely. And I think yeah, I love that that's kind of that hit your radar. And that, because again, it's none of us know what is going to happen in any given situation in life. And there's so much beautiful, wonderful things in the world, and there's so much nightmarish garbage. And it's like, why not go for your thing? Why not, whatever that thing is? Um, and so, yeah, I love that. I love that it's kind of, a bit of a moment. Who else do you love reading? Who are some of the people, and over the course of your life, even in your young life, who are some of the people that in when you read their work, you said, yeah, I want to do this too?
Yeah, so I mean, recently I'm, a big fan of any suspense thriller writers, like, Sherry LaPena is also a Canadian favorite. But I like, I grew up and in university, I discovered Michael Ondaatje, a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian literary writer, and his big famous work was The English Patient, and how that was made into a Oscar nominated Hollywood movie. But even my high school years, I remember really being into Jim Morrison and the Doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered Jim Morrison honestly through like one of his autobiographies. Obviously, he was long past, and was reading the autobiography, and and so I read a lot of his poetry in his lyrics, and they kind of really spoke to me because they were very different, and at that time, a lot of taboo stuff as well,
Mm-hmm.
and interesting, when I had one of my book signing uh events at the Indigo bookstores, I came across literally like this thick, 500-page like anthology of all his collective works over the years, like pictures of like
Wow.
his scribblings his journals and whatnot. And that was basically all reproduced into this collection that was like, yeah. And so I ended up getting my partner to buy the book for me, and yeah, and so I kind of have it on my bedside, and I haven't quite cracked it open. I mean, I've cracked it open, but I haven't quite really started to like take the time to be like, okay, I'm gonna read through it. And I kind of actually had an idea to maybe just read his work, but post it on my Instagram or my Twitter page, and just kind of fall back in love with that poetry as well, and one of my great inspirations.
I think that's great, and it's something in the last few years that I've been doing is revisiting some of the things that inspired me when I was a kid. So some of the books, I've bought some books that I read when I was 9, 10, and up, and it's really interesting to kind of go back to those things that really spoke to us when we were young. And
Yeah,
I could see that, yeah, as a writer, a lot of ideas could start flowing from that, of like reconnecting with those
yeah.
things. Um, well, I do want to let people know, first of all, that we talk to Crime Writers of Canada members all the time on this show. And of course, everyone can go to crimewriterscanada.com to find out new releases and other artists. But you can also go to jassaujla.com, JASSAUJLA.com, to find out everything about you. And of course, Next of Twin is available now, and there's lots of handy links on Jazz's website that can help you, just one click and you are there. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Again, the book is Next of Twin. Find out who did it. We'll be right back with Bonnie Laufer on The Breakdown, Channel 167, Canada Talks.